Hello everyone, this is Oliver from Transentis Consulting. Welcome to our first meetup this year in the Transforming Enterprises Meetup series. As you know, our series is all about finding new ways and approaches of transforming enterprises, both at the business model level, at the organizational level, and also obviously at the technological level from the digitization viewpoint. And I'm really excited today that we have a guest speaker for the first time. So I've often mentioned, we've been doing this meetup now for 2 or 3 years. And I've often said I always welcome external speakers to come in to enrich our topics. And I'm very happy today to have Robert Briese with us, who took part in our last live meetup, which we held here in Berlin. And Robert, and that meetup was about systems thinking and agility. It was a very exciting meetup, a very interesting meetup. We had lots of a very fruitful discussion. And Robert was one of the participants. And it turns out Robert is also an expert on the LeSS Agile framework. And so I'm very excited today to have Robert with us to say something about LeSS, to introduce LeSS to you, because I think it's a very exciting, a very interesting framework, and also a very systemic framework. And so without much further ado, I'll hand over the word to Robert to introduce himself and then to introduce his topic. So I hope you enjoyed this. Okay, so now I'll hand over to Robert. Robert, you are, I'm sending your video live.
Perfect, thank you, Oliver. Thanks, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Oliver, can you see my screen, my slide?
I see your slide, I send it live, okay?
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So I will start. The topic of today is scaling agility by descaling organizational complexity. Actually, also more with less. This is the title. Is like the shorter title. But what I want to talk about is actually what it means to have an agile organization. And we will figure out that LeSS and the LeSS framework is a mean to help you to get into that direction. Before I go into topic, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Robert. I've been working since 20 years in the area of agile software development. I have been working with small and large organizations. 2011 is the first time that I really had a chance to work with a small team and do continuous delivery. That was very, very novel at that time. I was actually at SAP, and we just did the internal address book where you can find employees and so on. And for me, that was fascinating after doing like regular traditional project management to see how you can basically develop a product, in that case, the address book, and with direct feedback from customer, which were the employees at SAP. And within like 40 minutes, we could have a change and go live with that and reiterate every sprint, every 2 weeks, think about the product, what next should we do, and also change the way we're working. And that was so amazing for me to witness this, and I tried to replicate that since then. And with large organization, I figured out that it's much more difficult to do that. I've been getting very close to that feeling of being, self-managed team, working closely with customers by applying the LeSS framework. In 2019, I became certified LeSS trainer, and since then, I'm doing trainings and adoptions for agile organization. So in 2013, I've founded the company called Lean Sherpas. We see ourselves as the ones that support small and big organizations go the difficult path of agility, become an agile organization, become a learning organization, and we support them with our knowledge in the fields of systemic thinking, product growth, and technical excellence. We are only one of 10 large-scale Scrum coaching companies in the world, and we are the only one who provide all the LeSS trainings for all the German trainers, which are actually at the moment only 4 active trainers that do German trainings. So the topic of today is scaling agility, and we often get the question from many clients. In the first interview, most of the time we are asked, how can we apply Agile at scale in our organization, in our big complex organization? How can we do Scrum? How can we do adopt an Agile framework or something like that? And I often say that actually I don't think this is the right question to ask. I don't think it should be about applying some framework, doing Scrum, or doing any kind of Agile flow model or anything like that. The question should be more about, why are you trying to become an Agile organization? What do you want to achieve with doing Scrum or LeSS or whatever you think you need to adopt? You don't want to do it just because many others are doing it out there, but you have something in mind. And often this is then we get to the fact that there is a need for be more adaptive, to be more agile in the way of really adaptive, responsive, nimble, to change direction, continuous learn, evolve, and work on what is most important from your customer's perspective, for your business. If the market change, to be able to rapidly deliver value and to change also, and to have the skills to adapt. So that's why I always say, and it's from Craig Larman and Bas Vode, who actually invented the LeSS framework. Agile is not a practice, is a quality of an organization to be nimble and adaptable at low cost. So, if you take one big thing out of this talk, then I hope it will be the fact that it should always be about being agile and not doing agile. And that's why we try our customers to help, how to be an agile, how to become an agile organization, and not to do agile practices. So I think the more important question, it's not about how to introduce agile frameworks or way of working in your organization, but about how to simplify your organization in that way that it becomes agile. It can quickly change direction at very minimal costs. Why is that so important? So we know there are, those stories about Kodak, who failed to adopt the shift from film to digital photography and filed bankruptcy in 2012. Blockbuster, who was slow to respond to online streaming and went bankruptcy in 2010. And many others like Nokia, BlackBerry, Sears, and so on. So that's like the negative part of a company not being adaptive and agile enough to change direction. And we see that successful companies are exactly the opposite. What we often noticed is that when there's something that works very well, maybe at your competitors, then successful companies are able to adapt this very fast. It's something that is often called fast following. You know, you might you see this kind of stories feature in Facebook, Instagram. This was a feature that was introduced by Snapchat in 2013. Things like ephemeral messaging, or this kind of videos and pictures that can be posted and after 24 hours are deleted. And companies realize that this is something that customers are looking at. So Instagram and then Facebook in 2016, 2017, they copied this kind of features just to be as attractive as Snapchat was. And I think nowadays it's even more important to be that adaptive and be that fast in applying, acting on your customer wishes and seeing what works and what doesn't. You cannot wait 3 years to copy important trends that might help you like keep your customers, because nowadays I think customers are ready to switch platforms in a blink of an eye. So that's why I think it's very important to become an agile organization. Another example that is much more recently is from the e-mobility incentive program. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with this Treibhaus quota. It's a program, it's an incentive in Germany that was introduced, created by the Federal Ministry for the Environment, and as a way to promote the use of electric vehicles in Germany and to help achieve the country's greenhouse gas reduction targets. So this program allow energy companies, for example, to buy from people that have an electric car, to buy kind of so-called emission certificates, use them to improve their offset targets, their emission targets, or even sell them to other companies. So it's a quite interesting new business model that was created at the beginning of last year, when individuals were able, everyone who had an electric car is able now to every year to sell their emission certificates online to such companies. And I was working last year with a company that was in that energy sector, and it took them actually more than a half a year to deliver a platform where users, individuals can upload their license of the car licenses, and then after some time get money for that, basically selling their emission certificates. And why did it take so long? I mean, at the end, if you think about it, it's not such a big thing that you have to do. You need a website where you have a form where people can add their data. But most of the time it was like, these companies, they are so big, there is one department that takes care of the website development. There is the lead management department. There is the CRM system team that works on the CRM system, and so on. So you have a lot of coordination and making sure that in each team's backlog there is the respective work, and then it has to be tested that everything works together. Something that basically, if you are a small startup, you can do it very fast. My point is that when you are one team product development, like if you are product development team consisting of 7 to 9 people, then you can really fast reiterate and do all the changes and try out new products and reiterate. But if once you become larger, we tend to introduce a lot of complexity. Just doing like things like Scrum on the development team level, like in the software development, it will not lead to basically an agile development or an agile company. So this is an image from a book that I like very much called Inspired by Martin Keegan. And exactly there he makes exactly this case where he says that basically if your development team does like Scrum, but there is a huge process in front of that and afterwards that has to happen, like come with a business case from an idea, create a roadmap, come up with requirements, then think about the technical design, the user design and all the things, then build it, and then do the testing and deployment. If you have still all the steps before and after, then it doesn't help you at all to do Scrum on the development level. What you want is actually to do all these things by the whole organization at once in a very small loop and reiterate. But as I mentioned before, in many organizations, when they grow, they create something that is called complexity creep. So this means that as our businesses and work becomes more and more complex, and the need for market growth is there, market growth increases, also the organization grows, and we introduce complexity in the organizations. And this additional complexity slows us down and stops us for our ability to innovate fast and create products fast. And I would like to challenge you now to think about what are typical things that you have been seeing in your current organization or in other organizations that you've been working with. What are typical things that you saw where additional complexity was introduced that thought to like improve processes or things, but at the end leads to too much complexity? On the board, I hope you can access it. There is an area with post-its called organization complexity. Maybe you can add some post-its there. So I see, Oliver, you've been able to add one. Let's see if anyone can come up with things that usually create additional complexity that is designed to deal with the increased complexity in organization, but often also becomes cumbersome because it leads to a slower organization. Cool. So I see already a couple of very good things there. Hierarchies. So in order to manage the whole complexities, we create hierarchies and then basically silos or teams, departments that can focus on some specific parts and become better in that. But we create often silos with those hierarchies. And you have it also there, functional silos. Sometimes it's functional silos, like we saw in the slide with design, business analysts, and so on, testing. And sometimes often it is technical silos, like the front-end team, the back-end team, the database team, the team that is working on AI and all those things. Tools, many tools. Then many suppliers, many different suppliers. And with all this kind of different silos, then obviously you have dependencies. So let me go back to the presentation, and we see my examples here are, like you mentioned, this specialized teams, single functional teams or component teams, teams that are special one topic. Then we have also project management or special people for synchronization. In many organizations that I work with, there are single Scrum teams, and then the product owner needs to align of each team together to synchronize the work. Or you have many HR practices and policies that lead to to additional complexity, like and not having agile organization, like measuring, for example, the success of every single person in the company, not as a whole, or hierarchical layers. We talked about that. Geographical distribution, when you grow and you become distributed in many different parts of the world. And another very harmful thing that we see is this kind of role distinction and over specialization. People, and often in many company, people that are hired to for one specific role that should specialize themselves in one field. And those are so-called, we like to call them organizational quick fixes. So often when something doesn't go smooth because you grow, you might experience that with testing, or you might experience that with deployment to production and stuff like that. What most organizations are doing, they introduce quick fixes to manage these problems, like a testing manager, a deployment team, a DevOps team that actually missed the whole idea about dev and ops and doing this together, but actually is focused on fixing problems. And this we see very critical in many organizations, that we introduce quick fixes with specialized teams. And the more we have this, the more problems we see in organizations. So we see that the more roles are introduced, the less responsible the teams are, because there are specialists. There is this role that takes care about this, like deployment or testing or anything like that. The same with artifacts. The more artifacts there are, the greater the distance between teams and customers. So if you have a design document and you have even user stories or stuff like that, the idea was basically that the customer with the user story talks about how a user would use the product. And it's not designed as an artifact that has to be completely written down and handed over from someone to someone else. It's about the interaction and the talk. And the more artifacts we are, usually the greater distance there is, and also the more processes are documented and people forced to follow them, then the less learning and team ownership of the process is happening. So what we promote and what we want to see in many organizations in order to become agile and adaptable is the fact that we want to see where we can remove roles in order to give more responsibility to the teams, to make everyone understand that it's the teams responsible to test or to deploy to production. Get rid of artifacts in order to have a more focused teams. Doesn't mean that you should not use any kind of documentation or write down acceptance scenarios and acceptance tests and so on. But if you use this, try to have a process that where the focus is on the customer and understanding, and you can reuse this, like, for example, with living documentation, create create specification that is also tests and are then documented in your code, and basically are always then used when you do automated tests. And the same with processes. Let the teams define how they work. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be any kind of processes, but this should be the ownership of the teams and not set on top from outside. The more we have that, and so we think that the less imposed roles and processes and artifacts, the more adaptive the organization will become. So we encourage you to look at complications, additional complexity in the areas of leadership, how leadership is done and how it is basically with hierarchies promoted, or is that something that everyone in the team needs to take responsibility for leadership? How the organizational structure is set up and how the teams are formed. Look at roles and activities, look at the processes, and think about how to simplify them and make the team more in charge of creating them. Same with the systems in ITs, and same with decision maker. So in my last courses, I give a lot of examples from company like Netflix that wrote about how basically they get rid of many rules. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, wrote this nice book about no rules, where he describes how basically everyone is encouraged to not act upon existing rules, but decides for themselves what would be a good action to take from the company perspective. And this is something that we encourage organization to do in order to be more adaptable. So actually, before I go to suggestions how to do this and what are things that you could do, again, an exercise for you on the Miro board. In the next area, ideas to reduce organizational complexity. Create some ideas where you think about what could then basically help reduce complexity. What are things that you could get rid of to become an agile organization? And then give you a couple minutes to that, and then I will show you my suggestions. So think about things that you can get rid of or things that you can create in order to reduce the complexity. So I see already some good ideas, maybe just 2 more minutes for others to jump in and add something. See Oliver, Andrea, thanks for being active and using the time also to think about yourself. What can we do? All right, so let's see what we got. So simplify product service portfolio. Think about maybe offering less, has a stronger focus. That could be definitely one idea to reduce complexity. Regular conversation structure for everyone to remember and realign for the greater goal. That's a very important thing, is to reiterate what is our goal, and also not only to reiterate it, but also from in regular interval to think about are we doing the right things and are we working on the right things, or should we shift? And that really on a global level, not on a very local, personal or team specific level. That is very important, and focus on value, I really like also this, which is very much related, the poster with empower teams to get end-to-end responsibility and take decisions. So creating teams that have end-to-end responsibility is one of the main, the biggest things that you can do from my perspective. Create transparency, stop escalating and start collaborating. A very, very good point. And let me go to the next slide. So try to get rid of things like separate specialized teams, functional teams like analysts or architects or the user experience designer. Integrate all these people, as you mentioned, they're on the board in end-to-end delivering teams. And there's many words for this. So Martin Keegan in his book, he talks about product teams. In LeSS, we call this feature teams. And I know Martin Keegan has a different understanding for feature teams, like the feature factory that only delivers feature. What we mean about feature teams is what Marty in his book talks about product teams. So there might be different ways, and in team topologies, if you're familiar with that book, it's called streamed aligned teams. It's all the same. We want to have teams that can have end-to-end deliverable. They have not only the functional skills in the teams, because I think nowadays many understood how important it is to have cross-functional teams. But what's more important and what is missing from my perspective in many organizations is to also see that we don't only need cross-function teams, but we also need teams that work on multiple components. They can work on every part of the code that is needed to deliver an end-to-end business. Doesn't mean that every team should be able to work on every feature. And as we talk a lot in our LeSS trainings, there will still be specialized teams. But if you do specialization, and I'll talk about this a bit later, then do it please in the customer domain. Do it in the different value area parts. So have teams that work on specific parts of the customer problem, but they can deliver something end to end. And then you get rid basically of the need of coordination, at least the coordination that requires that some team cannot do anything until some other team has done it. But there will still be some kind of coordination needed when it comes to have the same design, or have the same clean code structure and stuff like that. And this is where the other point comes in that you had on the board with create communities. So one important thing that we recommend in LeSS is to get rid of head of UX, head of QA, this kind of hierarchy roles again that create bottlenecks and so on, but create communities that do exactly the same thing, make, for example, decisions or coordination, and you do it through a community instead of one specific bottleneck person. So think about those ideas, how you could descale and make your organization less complex. Get rid of chief product owner or team product owners that actually don't own a product and have just one product or one product backlog. Even like getting rid of Scrum Masters who are coordinating between the teams, but actually have their teams doing the coordination themselves. That are important ideas that you can think about. So think about, as I mentioned, cross-functional self-managing teams, one product backlog and one product owner for one customer-facing product, and then also think about what is my product? How can I extend the product definition to have a broader product, not seeing some kind of component in Microsoft Word as the product, like maybe translation, if you want to add this in the product and make a team for that, but actually seeing the bigger picture, seeing a Word or maybe the whole Office as the whole product, and make teams that can deliver end-to-end features from the customer perspective, and give more responsible to the teams to manage the roles and the relationship inside, eliminate specialized roles and processes, and let the team resolve dependencies themselves. And those are all concepts that we promote in LeSS. Other non-organizational suggestions are to have one sprint and one integrated potential shippable product every every sprint, so that you can look at the bigger picture, even on the organizational level, after every 2 weeks, not only after a couple of months, but actually after every week, after every sprint, after every 2 weeks, look at, are we delivering the right thing? And as you mentioned there on the board, look at the big picture, look at the goal, and did we make progress on that or not? And how is the process? How are we working together? Reevaluate that in very short cycles, not in once a year or even 3 months, or after every product increment, how it's done in frameworks like SAFe, which is then every couple of months. Do it regularly and think about how to introduce change or adapt, be flexible every sprint. And we think this is very important. Then the role of managers change in such organization, because again, you want to get rid of bottlenecks and people on top of hierarchies, but have teachers in the organization that teach people to see the big picture, to adapt, to change their skills, see what skills are missing. And also the engineering practices have to change. We need engineering practices that support agility. We need test-driven development. We need continuous integration, continuous delivery. Things that companies like Google have adopted since many years, but many other companies are really struggling to do that. So it's very important, if you want to deliver a product together with many, many teams, then look at how Google does it. And they wrote a great book about it that was published last year by Titus Winters, and look at this kind of ways how to improve your engineering practices, because this is crucial if you want to be adaptive, to create product increment every couple of days, ideally daily, and to also be able to release it and learn from it every couple of days. So to summarize, before I go into showing you some examples on organizations that have been doing this, they have been descaling using LeSS. I will summarize some ideas on how to become an agile organization. And one way to do it is really have a closer look at the LeSS framework that introduces things like one product owner, one product backlog for the whole product, no product owner on team level, and puts by that an organizational design in place that is optimized for adaptiveness. So you get rid of additional complexity that might be still in your current organization, and designs an organization that can quickly adapt. So that's one way how you could introduce an agile organizational design. It's very important that you have a chance, and that's what you do in LeSS after every sprint, that you continuously reflect about system dynamics. You look at the whole system and not just on team level, so you understand how the whole system operates. We use system thinking for that and cozy loop diagrams, and get management support to optimize for adaptiveness, to remove complexity, to introduce changes, to get rid of existing complexity. And I also suggest to think about the perfection vision. Where do we want to be as a company? For example, to deliver high quality every day, a high quality product, be in a position to deliver maybe every couple of minutes a new product, a new service, and be able to get feedback on that, and work on what's most important from customer perspective. That might be something that you cannot achieve in a couple of months or so on, but guides you as a perfection vision for everyone in the organization to understand where the organization should develop to, and use principles like system thinking, lean thinking, empirical process control to guide your way to think about how to do that. Those are key principles in LeSS. So let me go to some example before I come to the end. One example is the SAP store, which is built on HYBRIS, a product that was bought by SAP and can be then used to create an e-commerce store, can be integrated with CRM, SAP, ERP, and so on. And I've coached the organization that was at the beginning 3 teams, at the end 7 teams, how to basically act as they were not 7 teams that were separate, working on their different parts of the system components, the SAP ERP team, the CRM team, the HYBRIS team, but actually are one big organization, 7 teams that are doing Scrum. And that's basically the whole idea about LeSS, to do kind of multiple team Scrum instead of multiple Scrum teams. What I mean is there is not Scrum done on the team level, and then we have a huge part of organizational synchronization on top of it. But what's happening at the end is we do Scrum, but not with one team, but actually with multiple teams. We have one product owner and one product. All the features are customer-centric features. We need to integrate this partner product in the shop. We want to allow people to pay with PayPal or with Apple Pay. So those are customer-centric features, and the teams are not specialized in any kind of things like payment or front end, back end, but they actually have all the skills that they need to deliver one feature. And break this down. If they cannot do payment in one sprint, they break this down in smaller increments to deliver this over a couple of sprints, but it's always customer centric. That's what we did. We had one product owner, one product backlog. After some time, we started actually still with team product owners that we luckily managed to get rid of after some time. And we had an increment every 2 weeks, and we had a retrospective and a review for all teams together, where we looked at the store and what are the new features that have been delivered. And we talked about what are the next things that we need to do, what are the most important crucial features, and what are the changes that we need to do from the process perspective. And by that, the team members got much more responsibilities. They were not only the ones who were implemented, but they were also engaged in what should be additional features that we should deliver, and in designing those features together with customers or people from the marketing department. And when you have this like 8 teams or 6 or even 9 or 10, you can work with this concept of one product owner and one backlog. When you become even larger, and we're talking about 20, 30 teams, like at BMW Autonomous Drive, then you actually can still try to apply the same concept with, and they should try to focus still on the whole product, which would be in that case, it was the Autonomous Drive platform. But you have, in addition to that one product owner and that one big backlog for 30 teams, you might have to do some kind of focused requirements area. Kind of do some kind of local optimization, just for the sake that you don't want to have meetings with too many people, and kind of create some kind of focus. But the focus should be on customer-centric requirements area. So it shouldn't be a technical focus, a functional focus. It should be on different value streams, if you want, or value parts of the product that create value for the customer. And you should be able to flexibly change that. So if in that area of the product, those type of features are not that important anymore, then you could move those teams in other areas where there are much more interesting, important customer-centric features to do. And then what you will be doing, and what we did at BMW, was having multiple requirements areas. I think we had at one point like 8 requirements areas with each 8 teams. And in each requirement areas, we focused on different aspects of the autonomous drive. So we had teams that were focused on urban drive, because we understand that the functionality that you need when your car drives alone in the city might be different than the features that you need when your car drives autonomous on the highway. So this is how we create specialized areas, but they are specialized still in customer centric fields. And we still had one sprint and one sprint review and retrospective for each of these requirement areas with up to 8 teams. And at the end, it was one increment. So it was still the software that was implemented into the car, and the main sponsor was sitting in the car at the sprint review every 2 weeks, and was sitting there and was driven by the car itself to experience the new features. And this is what creates this full transparency about, are we working on the right thing, and so on. And you by removing the complexity of having single specialized product backlogs of each team and trying to synchronize this and everything, we became a much adaptive organization. And yeah, with those 2 examples, I would like to thank you for your attention and joining me to this session. And I would love to get some questions. So if you go back on the board, you could, in the Q&A, drop your questions. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have, either to this real case scenarios, or how to apply LeSS and by that descale your organization. Oliver, should we keep here in this room, or should we move to the other channel?
So Robert, thank you for your great presentation. First of all, thank you very much. I think we should move across to the virtual coffee lounge, because we're coming up to 5 o'clock anyway. I posted the link for the virtual coffee lounge in the Q&A section, so anyone who follows that link will arrive in a new Teams meeting, and we can gather over there. And whoever is interested in having a post meetup discussion, asking questions, more specific questions to Robert, and please join. Okay, so the link is here in the Q&A chat. Is the link for the Teams meeting, and also the link is also on the Miro board. So if you go to the top of the Miro board, there's a link to the virtual coffee lounge. So it's easy to find, and it's more fun. Then we can have an interactive discussion. So I think that's the best way to go. So Robert and me will head over there right now, and I hope to see you there. Is that from your point, Robert? Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. I'll jump right there.
I'll just leave you here a few seconds. Obviously, you can wave goodbye because, yes, you're live now, Robert, so you can say goodbye to the crowd. Thank you very much. Thank you from my side also. And I look forward to seeing you in a second in the coffee lounge. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.